Another thing that I've noticed is that students who are dealing with attention deficit is that when they sit down to study, if they're preparing for a paper, if they're preparing for a homework assignment, or whatever it happens to be, the challenge is that they can do, say, maybe 10 or 15 minutes of kind of intense study, and then their mind just starts to wander. Okay, so instead of constantly fighting that, what we encourage them to do is utilize that. Okay, utilize those brief, intense moments. So we use a combination of things, a note-taking process, where you focus on, as you're taking notes, you focus on summarizing, and you focus on conceptualizing that information as you're taking the notes, or even as you're going through materials and pulling notes in order to prepare for a paper. Then take that information and don't spend too much time on it right then. Set it down, move on to something else, and then come back later. And once again, in these brief, maybe 10 or 15 minutes at a time, go through and work on conceptualizing the information that you have so far. So you have to revisit it. Instead of sitting for like perhaps an hour or 2 hours and working through information, the students should come back in maybe 20-minute bursts over the course of an entire day, or maybe over the course of 2 or 3 days, so that they can have, number one, so they can really intensely focus during that period of time, but then have a nice gap of time before they have to come back and see it again, which allows for two things. One, it allows them to not try and force themselves into sitting there all that time, which is really just a waste of their time anyway. But the other thing is it allows them time to process that information, because it's still moving around in your mind, even though you're on to other things. Anytime you take something in and you think about it a second time, you bring in everything that you've learned since the last time you visited that. So it actually allows them to process it much better. So instead of this, for instance, for taking notes throughout an entire course, instead of taking notes every single day that you go to class and saving them up for 3 days before the test, what we encourage is visit those same notes every single day. Do a daily review of whatever notes you took in class that day. 10, 15 minutes, doesn't have to be long, but go through and conceptualize that information. Pull out the concepts, reduce the information down to simple concepts, and then review those concepts regularly. And that way they're getting a much better grasp, and instead of trying to learn it all at once and prepare for an examination or to prepare to write a paper, they really are learning the information along the way, and so they're able to use it so much more effectively. And it has been very, very successful working with students.